that Lavender Rhino Award. We'll take a photo. Everyone watch.
I'm much taller than you. So first, thank you, Joan, for those kind words. I really appreciate it, and I'm so honored by this honor. I'm happy to accept it. And I just want to take a few minutes to first thank the History Project. This organization has a special place in my heart, not only because it's almost the exact same age that I am, but also because I'm from the greater Boston area, and so preserving queer and trans history in this area means so much to me. This project is founded with commitments to preserving local history, to staying a community-based organization, and to making sure that people have access to real information. These same principles are the inspiration for the Digital Trans Archive. So when I started this project a few years ago, it really was something that I wanted to be able to bring to more people. And the way that we did that was by partnering with organizations, including the History Project, to share the resources that have been collected by queer and trans archives for decades. So this work is so important to me, and I'm really happy to be sharing in this celebration. There's been a lot of different supporters over the years for the Digital Trans Archive, and this is one of the great moments where I get to celebrate them publicly. So first I want to say that this project got started at the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts, and they gave an incredible amount of support. And I hear from a few chuckles that that might be a surprising place for the project to start, and I'm happy to chat more about that if you'd like. But the amount of enthusiasm for the project really started there. And in the past 2 years, I brought the project to Northeastern, and that has only proven to be an incredible space to grow the project more. So the administrative support that I've received for the project, including from our dean, Richard Poiger, who's here tonight, and everyone at Northeastern, the new colleagues that I've been able to meet who've really pushed the project along, asked me questions, and of course I have to shout out the students. This project has involved students every step of the way. I tried to count it up earlier today. We are well over 100 students who have contributed to this project. So it's community effort. Thank you for that. So it's really a community project to its core, and it's involved so many different people and collaborators throughout. I've been grateful to all of the archivists who have contributed to this, and I just have to say, Joan is the best of the best. So she has been phenomenal to work with. And the last thank you, because I do not get to publicly thank her often, is to my partner, Stephanie, who has been the biggest supporter of me and of this project from the start. So I just have to give her some public accolades. All right, thank you again so much for this award, and I'm looking forward to continuing our partnership together.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, KJ, for the work you do. KJ didn't talk as much or at all, I think, about another project he's involved with called Homosaurus, which as an archivist and librarian, I talk about constantly with people. Just look it up, Homosaurus. Just Google it. My name is Andrew Elder. I'm the chair of the History Project's Board of Directors. I'd like to take a moment to say a few thank yous to those who have made tonight possible. First, our planning committee. Krista Cunningham, Paul Duffy, Ben Federlin, Tony Grima, Jonah Wakwa, Anna Kosova, Helen Murphy, and Sam Valentine. Thank you for your time and dedication, from the evening planning meetings to the unending Zoom calls. Thank you for this wonderful evening. Thank you to Sarah Hatchley, who is taking photographs tonight. Thank you, Sarah. and Kelsey Grunstra and the Massachusetts Transgender Political Coalition for their help to live stream this program. I'd also like to take this opportunity to acknowledge my fellow board members, Libby Bouvier, Jonathan Chu, Paul Duffy, Julia Greeter, Tony Grema, Marvin Kavikoff, Neil Kane, Mark Crone, Russ Lopez, and Jessica Taylor. If you're here tonight, could you wave your hand or take a bow? I encourage you all to corner one of these people tonight and have for an interesting conversation to learn more about the work we do. I'm so grateful that I get to work with them. I also want to note that, like many of you, I'm kind of in awe of our executive director, Joan Alacqua. We hired Joan in January 2020 as our inaugural executive director, our first full-time staff person. And as you can imagine, over the course of the next few years, it's been a ride. During an unprecedented period in all of our lives, she's shown herself to be a thoughtful and courageous leader, a strong advocate for the History Project's values and mission, and a vocal champion of our community and our community stories. Please join me in thanking Joan. This fun moment where you're actually stuck. So you can kind of just now I'd like to thank the supporters, donors, and friends that have made this night possible and such a success. First, our 2022 host committee. This event wouldn't be possible without your support and your dedication to the work we do. Thank you to Kevin Hepner, Pat Gazemba and Karen Kahn, Russ Lopez and Andrew Sherman, John Affuso, Joanna DeSpirito and Abby Olson, Nan Duma, Ricky McFallon Figueroa, Tony Grema and Peter Muse, Joan Alacqua and Sarah Marina, Rob Johnson and Ryan Gosselin, Marvin Kavikoff, Neil Kane and Charles Shoemaker. So many people, so many supporters. Joyce Kaufman, Brad Stankowitz and Nicholas Manring, Alex and Patrick Taylor, and Jessica Taylor and Anna Wilson. Thank you all so much for your support. And last, I'd like to recognize tonight's amazing sponsors, the Boston Foundation, Eastern Bank, GLAAD, LGBTQ legal advocates and defenders, Mass Bears and Cubs, and Mass Equality. We've had a special and unique relationship with each of these organizations for years. I want to thank each of them for their continued support and for the work they do to support our community. So please join me in giving a round of applause for the supporters and sponsors of tonight's event. And I will turn it over now to Joan.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you for those kind words. It is very overwhelming to be sitting in a chair, unable to escape. But I really appreciate it. And it is honestly my pleasure to work with everyone involved with the History Project. We have so many volunteers and board members and supporters who allow me to make a lot of this happen. And it's been a community effort for, at this point, 42 years. And, here's to 42 plus more, I hope. So thank you, Andrew. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Arline Isaacson, tonight's history. So the first time I ever saw Arline's name, it was in a book called Courting Equality by Pat Gazemba, Karen Kahn, and Marilyn Humphreys, which I used to get down after I'd had a couple of drinks and cry about marriage equality. I wasn't going to tell that joke, but you're such a nice audience. I was a teenager during the fight for marriage equality, and it was a constant topic of discussion on the news, in school, in church, all around us. And so later on when I came out, I was so fortunate to be able to do so in a world where LGBTQ plus people have the right to marry, have protections from discrimination. I'm grateful for this world where, although there is still so much more work to do to ensure equality for all LGBTQ plus people and for all people, we have people like Arline Isaacson out there fighting the good fight. In the fight for equality, Arline Isaacson is a household name. Arline tirelessly lobbied to get the 1989 Gay Civil Rights Bill passed. That campaign for a gay rights bill began in 1972, although I don't think you were there then.
Thank you.
Senate several times throughout the 1980s. When it passed in 1989, it was only the second state-level gay rights bill in America. Throughout her career, Arline has lobbied every major LGBTQ+ issue. She's fought for domestic partnership for Massachusetts public employees. She's fought to enact hate crime and anti-bullying legislation. She's fought to ban conversion therapy of minors and to support transgender rights. Arline's work is groundbreaking, historic, and inspiring, and she continues to fight to protect the rights of LGBTQ+ people. Arline, in honor of your lifetime of contributions to our community's safety, rights, and equality, we present you with the 2022 HistoryMaker Awards.
Thank you, everyone. It looks like there's more paper here than even I brought. Jeez. I have home. So, thank you so much. I also, like JK, feel very, very positively about the History Project and the important work that you all do. It is not, however, because I was born the same year that you were created. And as some of my friends know, I pretty much hate anyone who's younger than me, so that's certainly not the reason, younger or thinner. But I'm very honored, I'm very, very grateful to receive this acknowledgement tonight. When I was thinking about what remarks I might want to make, it occurred to me, I started to think about how many years ago after the Gay and Lesbian Civil Rights Bill passed, some folks said, gee, why don't you write a book about all that happened and all the dirt? And it was so tempting to do it. I really wanted to do it. But I knew it could ruin the reputations of certain legislators, people who were either still alive or still kicking in the political arena. I didn't want to do that to them. But they're dead now. Actually, no, that's not true. But I have realized that, I've come to the realization that I can't write. So that isn't going to happen, and I can't afford to hire someone to do it for me. So I've moved into the arena of oral history. And that brings me to what I thought I would discuss this evening, which is to give you just a few anecdotes of the oral history that could fill several volumes of a book were able to write one. And it includes an acknowledgement, first off, that to plagiarize someone who is far more important than me, it takes a village. It takes a village to do this work. And the village includes people who aren't in this room and are not alive anymore, but we stand on their shoulders because they paved the path for all of us to be able to do what we have. It includes the volunteers and the activists and the elected leaders who voted with us, and our allies, without whom, candidly, we would not have been able to win the victories that we've enjoyed over the last many years. And I will admit also, I will acknowledge rather that for me, one of my greatest achievements to me are the two wonderful daughters that are joining me this evening. Would you raise your hands, Janet and Rebecca? They are, I confess that I think they paid the highest price of anyone for the work, the volunteer work that I did, because it made me a mother who was not around nearly as much as I should have been for them. But before they were born, when I was working on the Gay and Lesbian Civil Rights Bill, I think that we forget, some of us who are around then, and some of us who maybe weren't then might not have known these stories, how weird it was back then, how bad and how strange it was. And so if I curate a list of just a few of the weird things that used to happen to remind us all of how far we've come. Back in those days when we would lobby, we had to do what I called Homo 101. It was teaching them about who we are, that we weren't sick, that we weren't perverts, that we weren't pedophiles, that we actually weren't ungodly, just in order to get a foot in the door so they would talk to us. Now in those days, I always wore business drag because, you know, it made it easier for legislators to feel comfortable talking to me. But candidly, back then, some of my more radical lesbian feminist colleagues it kind of turned them off. They thought, if she dresses like that, she clearly is suffering from internalized homophobia, and so she can't represent us and she can't fight us sufficiently. Eventually, I think they got over it, but it took a while. In those days, there were so many closeted GLBTs working in the State House, and all of them, 95% of them were closeted. They were afraid to be seen talking to me in the hallways of the State House. Fear of guilt by association, fear that people saw me talking that it might implicate them, because we all know that the way lesbians recruit is we talk to straight women and poof, they become lesbians. Not that we could. That's another matter. So because people had to worry about being seen with me, they didn't want me to leave messages in their offices. So I decided I had to come up with a fake name, so I called myself Sally. And I would, if I had to leave a message in their office, I would say, "Would you tell Cynthia that Sally called?" And then they were safe, and they could call me back later. And just to give you a flavor of how weird it was back then, there was one day where I had made a passing reference to a Globe report, and a passing reference got included in a long article, which mentioned the fact that there were gay legislators who were closeted who were voting against us. But I never said any names. I didn't out people because I didn't believe in outing. And outing, I think, wasn't even a term of art back then. So a week or so later, I get a message from a straight colleague. He said, "Oh, Arline, I've been talking to Senator so-and-so, a conservative from the Southeast. He said, you are never to darken his doorstep again." I said, "Why? What did I do?" He said, "Because you suggested that a senator could be gay." That was it. He could not imagine that a colleague of his could be gay. It so threw him off. He never wanted to speak to me ever again. He ended up doing so, but it took a while to break him down. Now, as soon as the Gay, Lesbian, Civil Rights Bill passed, some of you may remember that our opponents immediately tried to repeal it on the ballot. And we did in this state, for the first time ever, a decline to sign campaign, a truth squatting campaign. Now, thankfully, the issue ended up not going to the ballot. And it was a good thing because we were busy with so many other fights that were not of our choosing, fights like legislators trying to prohibit us from being parents. Do any of you remember that? They wanted to prohibit us from being foster parents, adoptive parents. It was one amendment that even said biological parents. I always thought, let that sucker pass. I want to see them enforce it, you know? And during the AIDS crisis, of course, you may recall, they had bills that did things like would put us on an island in Boston Harbor, quarantine us there so we wouldn't get them sick. It was a wild and a crazy, crazy time. When we moved into the fight for marriage equality, which parenthetically was a 10-year battle, people don't realize that it started in 1998 when they tried to ban marriage equality. Massachusetts, as you know, was the first state to win the right to marry in the courts, thanks to GLAAD. But the people don't know oftentimes that we were the first state to defeat the marriage bans, the first state to defeat DOMAs. And why did it happen here? Was it because we were so progressive? No, really not. We didn't have the votes back then in the State House. It was because we had an infrastructure. We had a GLBT infrastructure of professionals, of lobbyists and lawyers and communications experts and organizers and field people who were able to jump right into the fight and knew what they were doing and didn't have to be trained. People who had dealt with legislators for years so that legislators trusted us. They knew we were reliable. They knew that if they voted with us, we would reciprocate and vote for them at election time, and it made all the difference in the world. After the first vote on marriage equality, on the ban on marriage equality, I went up to a legislator to thank him, and he said, "Well, you know, Arline, when I first arrived here, so-and-so told me, if you're good with the gays, you got a friend for life." And that gentleman's name is now the Speaker of the House, Ron Mariano. So it's significant that he was that good that early on. Once when our opponents started gathering signatures against us on an issue of petitions to create this marriage ban, we did a decline to sign campaign, but very importantly, We did something that no one had ever done anywhere in the country before. We created a website and we posted the names of everyone who signed the initiative petitions on the internet so that everyone could see their names. And people began to flip out. We started to get flooded by calls by people saying, I didn't sign the petition. Why is my name there? And we uncovered massive amounts of fraud and forgery in the signature gathering process. Eventually, the issue of whether or not you can post the names of signatures on initiative petitions, another state ended up challenging that question, and it went up to the Supreme Court many years later, and we won. And one of the reasons we won, and cited in the Supreme Court's decision, was what happened here in Massachusetts and the work that so many of the folks here in this room did in that regard. I'll tell you one story that has always been a favorite for me because it touches me sort of emotionally about the marriage equality battle. In the very first days, you may recall that in the very first votes on marriage equality, and there were many votes, there were like 20 votes, they spanned days and days and weeks and months even. They kept coming back and voting on the damn thing over and over again. In part because we were delaying the vote, in part because we were trying to buy time, in no small part because we knew we didn't have the votes and we needed to delay and buy time in order to win. The very first day of the voting, they had cordoned off the area. Thousands of people came into the State House, so many that they were actually considering closing down the State House to the public. It was our side, it was their side, and they cordoned off areas with ropes so people couldn't get too close to legislators. Now, our people very wisely arrived early, and they were right up against the ropes. All the LGBT folks were there. Is there any surprise that we had the best real estate on the gay people? Can we talk? So I walk into the area, and I hear that our people are singing. And they're singing, going to the State House and we're gonna get married. And I flip out. I do a beeline for them, and I say, stop, stop. And they're looking at me like, Debbie Downer, really? And I said, you can't sing that. If you sing that, legislators are going to think we're making a mockery of the institution of marriage. They're going to think we don't revere it. They're going to think that we're not serious about it. So instead of that, could you sing patriotic songs? Could you sing, this land is your land, this land is my land? Can you sing songs that make them remember as they sit in the chamber debating our rights, that the rights they're about to take away are the rights of their fellow citizens? Can you help them listen to their better angels? Well, at first, some of the gay men in the group said, excuse me, honey, but we sing show tunes. But eventually they came around, and they started to sing. And they didn't sing for 5, for 10, or for 15 minutes. They sang for hour after hour after hour. We were there till midnight, and they kept singing. People brought in bottles of water and song sheets, because not everybody could remember the words. And they kept singing for day after day after day. It was psychological warfare of a kind that I never even imagined, because the legislators in the chamber could hear them singing, and it really caused them either pain or pleasure, depending on how they were going to vote. And it was such a profound moment. At one point, a bit inevitably, towards dinner time, some people had to go home. They had to walk their dogs, they had to feed their kids, and they'd call up their friends. And people would come to the State House. I heard stories about people calling Club Cafe, and that it emptied out, and people got in the cabs, and they came to the State House, and they stayed for hours and hours and hours. I'm sorry, I still get emotional. Here it is, 20 years later, I still get emotional because it was so meaningful, and it was so important, and it showed the brilliance and the commitment of the volunteers and the activists and the average LGBT person who just wanted to see the right thing done, that they would do this day after day after day. And I and we are eternally grateful to them for having done that and been so committed. I'll end on a better note than that one. One that doesn't make me cry. And I'll share one last anecdote because I think it's kind of funny. Is my co-chair Gary here? If He's not? Okay, good, then I can tell the story. So, as some of you may know, every Pride Day, we would set up a booth, and we would have cards, and we'd ask people to sign the cards, send a card to your legislator about whatever the issue of the moment was that we were lobbying. And inevitably, some people would say, you know, I'm willing to do more than just sign a card. I know this legislator. You know, my mother knows him, or he's my teacher taught him. I have some connection to him, and they'd be willing to do more, which of course in the lobbying world is golden. So I'd always write down a little note, and I'd set it aside so I could contact that person later. I or someone else would say, gee, can we follow up with you? Can you help us with this legislator? But you always had to make 2 piles. Sometimes someone would come over and we would know that we didn't need help with that legislator. Sometimes you knew we really did. So one day, a woman comes over and she said, she signs the card, she said, you know, I'm willing to do more. And so I make a little note of her name and her legislator, and I put it aside. She didn't know it at the time, but I knew we didn't need her help, because my co-chair had slept with this legislator the night before, so I knew we had his help. But I couldn't tell her. So a few weeks ago, I was going through some old papers, and I found this stash of cards on which I had written different notes and annotations. And I found a pile where I did not have to follow up with someone because I knew the legislator was voting with us and we were running out of time, so we had to triage. And I found this particular card, and I flip it over, and I was looking at the name of the person who signed it. It was someone I didn't know. Her name was Rachel Maddow. Before she was on TV. So I'll finish with this, which is, I think the work done by the History Project is terrifically important, and I'm so glad that you guys exist and keep all of these records. You're wonderful. It's kind of work that I could never do, because I can barely keep file folders in my own, office in order. But I'm so grateful for it, and I thank everyone for being here and for supporting their work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arline, for those stories and for that hot goss. And I can say, don't worry about, that's why archivists exist. We take those papers and end up in a filing cabinet, and we add some order to them if you're not somebody who keeps things in order. And I'm not somebody who keeps things in order, and my wife can attest that my side of the office is horrifying. But that's why archivists exist. We don't take over our records. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you all for being here with us tonight, celebrating with the St. Paul Club. I have like a minute left of remarks, and then you can go get another drink or a snack or dessert or mingle. Thank you for those of you who are on live stream with us tonight. Thank you for tuning in. And if anyone wants to watch the recording, it'll be up on our YouTube channel later. I just want to say, if you're interested in learning more about us, corner one of the board members, corner Andrew, corner some of our volunteers who were over at the checkout desk, or check-in desk, to learn more about the work that we do and how you can get involved, either as a volunteer, a donor, a corporate supporter. Please feel free to reach out. I do want to say, in this moment of just straight up unabashed hate against our community, where reproductive freedoms have been overturned, where white supremacists have marched through the street of Boston, where protections, particularly for transgender people, are being dialed back or abolished, it's so important to know our history. 10 states have enacted policies in public schools that ban discussion of queerness or give parents the option to opt out of LGBTQ+ inclusive curricula. LGBTQ+ books are constantly under attack in public libraries and public schools, and that's happening even here in Massachusetts. In 2021, bills were introduced to censor LGBTQ+ inclusive curricula and to ban trans children from playing sports or using facilities according to their gender identity. We have fought for these protections, and we've fought for these rights for LGBTQ+ people, and we have won, and we must be vigilant to ensure that we never go back. feel that our history is so important to document, to save, and to share, to learn from our community's past, to inform and inspire our future. I urge you to support the History Project's mission to make sure that LGBTQ people are never again erased, overlooked, or left on the margins of history. And volunteers are also standing by to take additional donations if you're interested in supporting our work tonight. Now, like I said, please go enjoy yourself with some more mingling. Thank you so much for being here, and have a very lovely evening.